G'day, I'm Ash, and unlike yesterday's video where we talked about the top 10 hated vehicle or aircraft for War Thunder, this time we're going to talk about 10 aircraft I'd love to see in the game. So, do us a favour, buy something with my decal and get 3% off anything in War Thunder. Also, subscribe. I'm trying to hit 69,000 subscribers by the end of the year because funny number. And without ado, let's get stuck into this list video. First up on the list is a vehicle which I've been considering for a long time. It's the Il-102. Essentially, it's a Soviet experimental jet-powered ground attack aircraft, and I know I'm not really fond of close air support vehicles, but this thing just looks so funky that I can't help but want it in War Thunder. A top speed of 950 kilometers an hour, it's equipped with two 30mm cannons or a 23, and can hold up to 6 bomb bays and 8 external pylons for a heap of different ordnance. Ultimately, it has a rear GSH-23L twin-barreled cannon in the rear, like Il-28s, but it's just kind of a bit funky, and I kind of want to see it. It was surpassed by the Su-25, but hey, it's an interesting vehicle that I think could be added to diversify the game. Now, this next one is a bit of a controversial choice because ultimately War Thunder is in a progression stage where at some point this vehicle will exist within War Thunder. However, the French Dassault Rafale is, well, a gust of wind or a burst in fire in a more military sense, according to Wikipedia. It's something that was produced in 1986 to present. They've got 259 of them. And, well, the French Air Force and Navy had separate requirements for new generation of fighters, and, well, we have this Canard Delta Wing multi-role fighter, which, equipped with a wide range of weapons, is possibly what would be one of the most advanced vehicles that War Thunder would ever get. Whether or not it's feasible, well, we're probably going to get an F-15 or an F-18 or something else like that in the future, so why not look at something, French or, something a little more unique. And granted, while it is expected that Generation 4 fighters will be in War Thunder someday, I really just like the look of the Rafale. Number 3 on the list is a VTOL aircraft, notably a vertical and or short takeoff and landing aircraft, or VSTOL. Essentially, this is the Yak-36. They made 4 of them. The first flight was January 9th, 1963. Max speed of about 900 kilometers, or about 560 mile an hour. It had a range of 370 kilometers, a decent service ceiling and everything else like that. 1 crew, but armament, 2 23mm guns, 2 hardpoints with a capacity of 100 kilograms of provisions for it to carry bombs or rockets or R3S air-to-air missiles, and can also carry rockets, 2 FFAR rocket pods with 16 rockets each. And it's comparable to that of other Soviet aircraft like the Yak-38 and the Harrier and obviously the Yak-141, but it is a interesting tricycle landing gear with a, well, short-cropped delta wings and just this really big mouth. I kind of like the design. It just reminds me of a big fish. Anyway, it should be in game. It's an early VTOL aircraft that would be fairly not that interesting to play, but it'd fit well within early jets. Now, the next aircraft is basically a World War II era fighter that was equipped with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine and basically was post-war called the G59. We already had the G55 in game. The G59, because it has a Merlin engine, which was equipped with 1600 horsepower, in 1948 basically meant that this aircraft was armed with 4 12mm cannons, and a 2-seat variation with 2 12.7mm guns was also ordered. But the G59 was completed with an introduction and a completely different aircraft from the predecessors, which installed a bubble-style canopies for improved vision and also had a featured cut-down rear fuselage design. The Italian Air Force adopted 20 of the former and 10 of the later variations, as well as there was another version approved for navigational training, but they did not need one beyond the prototype. Argentinian Air Force also evaluated a single exhibit, and there was also another sort of assortment of aircraft. The reason why I'd like to see this in game, well, it's just another Italian fighter that could go in the tech tree, so it'd be nice to have within War Thunder. The next aircraft I'd like to see is number 6 on this list is the Nanjing J-12. Essentially, it is a lightweight supersonic fighter that China developed, and they built about 8 of them. It is quite a small, quite compact sort of issued vehicle, and it was initially supposed to be a short takeoff and landing lightweight fighter in order to replace the MiG-19. 2 designs were developed, and they tested about 61 hours and 135 flights by 1977, and then, well, in the 1990s they also proposed upgrading the J-12's fighter design with a reduced radar cross-section. But essentially what you get here is a fighter that can do 1,400 kilometers an hour and is armed with 2 large caliber cannons in the wing roots and 3 hard points, 1 under each wing and 1 through the fuselage in the center, equipped with PL-2s for air-to-air missiles. Ideally, it's a small little light aircraft, similar to what I'd consider being the F-5 or other like Hawk-like sort of aircraft, and it'd be nice to see in War Thunder. Now, the next aircraft on the list is the Fiat G80 or the G82, depending on which variant. Max speed of about 910 kilometers an hour, essentially basically a jet trainer aircraft built and first flight in 1951, but they retired it in 1955. Essentially, they were offered Lockheed T-33s, and so they didn't need to have them, but what you can equip is basically 2 fixed forward firing 12.7 Colt M3 machine guns, 8 H-valve rockets and 2 500-pound bombs, and it would be pretty interesting at a low battle rating. But it's a unique Italian jet aircraft that could be put into a tech tree. Number 8 is the FMA IAE-33 Arrow 2. Essentially, it is an Argentinian indigenous design jet fighter designed by the Kurt Tank in the late 1940s in Argentina. Now, they built 4 of them, and their first flight was in June 1950. They retired them in 1960. However, it did have a Rolls-Royce Nene turbojet engine and did suspiciously look like the LA-174. Although this is kind of an interesting thing, because while it is an Argentinian aircraft, the top speed is 1,080 kilometers an hour, and it had guns which were 4 Hispano Souza 404 cannons, which, you know, is fantastic. But again, really a unique jet that should have been in War Thunder long ago. Now, the 1960s brings about a lot of Cold War aircraft. In fact, it's probably the best time for aviation development. And we don't have one of the Century jets in-game, and I really want to see them. This is the F-101 Voodoo. Essentially, it's an aircraft that's a supersonic jet developed by the McDonnell Aircraft Corporation, and it was supposed to be a long-range bomber escort and a penetration fighter for the United States Strategic Air Command. Basically, what you got was a 1954 aircraft that first flew, and then they built 807 of them with various units and basically used for different purposes. And what you get is a fascinating twin-engine aircraft that has a swept wing style, almost F-4 Phantom styled cockpit with a high tail, and it just looks fascinating. Essentially armed with 4 AIM-4 Falcons, although I don't know whether the armament could be translated to War Thunder. Number 9 is the Supermarine Spiteful. Essentially is a British Rolls-Royce Griffon engine fighter aircraft and was given as a late war vehicle. First flight was June 1944. They built 19 prototypes, and it was to improve upon the Spitfire's rolling characteristics, and basically the Air Ministry at the time advised them to devise a new wing to introduce a laminar flow section. But by 1942, Supermarine designers had realised the characteristics of the Spitfire's wing at high Mach numbers might become a limiting factor, and they came up with this rounded Spitfire design. Ultimately, it was cancelled because of the jet age, and by the time it was actually needed, they basically ended up by scrapping the program. But what you get is a number of them built with various other differences, being a 5-bladed propeller armed with a V12. You get a full complement of Hispano Mark 5s, 8 to 12 rockets, particularly RP3s, and can carry a whole ordnance load of bombs, including 2 1,000-pound bombs. Now, you've seen the thumbnail. Essentially, I do love Soviet jets. It is the Su-27. The Su-27 is one of my favourite aircraft, also known as the Flanker, because of its twin-engine, super maneuverable sort of looking design. I just think it's sexy. something about Russian aircraft is just gorgeous, and the fact that they even exist is really just a fascinating vehicle. Granted, its armament is probably what would cause a little bit of controversy, whether or not which variant they use and what they actually put. They can hold S8 rockets, S13 rockets, S25 rockets, all your Fab 500s, your cluster bombs, which are the RBK 250s, and basically a whole different host of aviation configurations. It's got 6 R27s in various configurations, R, ERT, ET, P, or EP, and then it's obviously got 6 R73s for anti-air missiles. I thought that was kind of interesting, because if we get an early version, then it might not be too broken, but I just love the look of this thing, and it's just something that is just delicious, and I hope that it is in War Thunder one day. Well, that's about it. Hopefully you've enjoyed my 10 list of more vehicles that should be in War Thunder. Let me know in the comments down below what your additions would be if you were to have 10 additions to the game. Thank you very much for watching. See you in another video shortly. Keep in mind we've got top 10 hated tanks, and also we've got 10 tanks to add, so we'll see you soon.